They fired me after I gave them everything. Not even a thank you. Years later, their company's falling apart. And they reached out. But I'm not the same person anymore. I still remember the exact moment they let me go. It was a Thursday. Overcast sky, not quite cold, just enough of a chill in the air to feel like the season was changing. I had just gotten out of a meeting where I pitched a workaround that saved the company about $200,000 a year. Everyone nodded. The VP said, "Brilliant, as always, Ben." I even saw a few smiles. Felt good. Then 2 hours later, I got a calendar invite. 10 minutes. Quick sync, it said. I thought nothing of it. I walked into that glass-walled room with a stupid coffee in my hand. Hazelnut, my usual, and a head full of new ideas for the next rollout. But when I stepped inside and saw Karen from HR sitting there with that laminated folder and that look on her face, I knew. My stomach dropped before a single word was said. They gave me the speech. The restructuring speech. The "this has nothing to do with your performance" speech. Then they said my role had been absorbed. Absorbed. That word bounced around my skull like a bullet. I did not say anything. Just sat there, listening, trying to hold my breath steady. I remember nodding. Even smiled a little. Like I was trying to make it easier for them. Karen looked at me with that trained pity. The kind they teach you in HR seminars. I wanted to ask them something simple. Just one thing. Why me? I was the guy who never took sick days. Who stayed late. Who fixed code at 2 in the morning from my kitchen table with one eye open. I covered for other people's mistakes more times than I could count. Even helped my manager dodge a lawsuit once, quietly patching up a compliance error before legal got wind of it. But none of that mattered now. They handed me a box and a timeline. I had 15 minutes to clear out. 15 minutes. I walked back to my desk like a ghost, weaving through people who still thought I was one of them. My name was still on the wallboard. My login still worked. But that chair would be empty by lunch. As I packed up, I heard someone say, "They let Ben go?" Then someone else whispered, "What? Are you kidding? That guy built half the back-end infrastructure." But nobody said it loud. Nobody said it to me. I kept my head down. Took my mug, a photo of me and my daughter at the beach, and that dumb little plant the receptionist gave me last Christmas. Then I walked out. No send-off. No handshake. Just the sound of the door closing behind me. And for the first time in 15 years, I had no idea where to go next. I sat in the car for over an hour, parked outside that gray glass building I used to call my second home. Just sat there, staring at the steering wheel like it might explain what had just happened. Every part of me wanted to believe this was a mistake. That I would get a call from someone, anyone, saying, "Ben, this is crazy. Come back in." But the phone stayed quiet. The building kept buzzing without me. I drove around aimlessly after that. Hit the same gas station I always used for my morning coffee, out of habit more than anything. Walked in like normal. The cashier even said, "Long day already?" I forced a laugh, but inside I wanted to scream. When I got home, I lied. Told my daughter Emma I was just working remote that day. She was 7, too young to understand how fast adults can be discarded. My wife, well, ex-wife by then, would not have cared even if I told her. She left 2 years earlier when the hours got too long and the attention got too thin. I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. Still had access to my inbox. Big mistake. I should have walked away right then. But instead, I searched through old threads, projects I led, problems I solved, compliments I saved just to remind myself I mattered. And then I saw it. A forwarded message I was never supposed to see. Someone had copied the wrong bin. The real reason I got axed. It was not performance. It was not even budget. It was politics. The new VP, Jordan, needed someone to blame for a rollout delay that was not even my fault. He used words like streamlining leadership and eliminating legacy inefficiencies. I guess 15 years of loyalty made me a legacy. I remember just staring at the screen. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. I had spent over a decade cleaning up messes made by guys like Jordan. Now he was using me as a shield. I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger, at least not yet. Just a slow, creeping kind of numbness. The kind that makes you question everything. Had I wasted it all? Had I spent the best years of my life grinding for people who saw me as disposable? That night, I barely slept. I stared at the ceiling until the walls started to blur, playing every scene of the last few years in my head like some sad movie. All the things I missed. The bedtime stories. The birthdays I joined late. The marriage I did not save. And for what? The thought hit me like a gut punch. I was not just unemployed. I was empty. But somewhere, deep in that hollow space, something else started to flicker. A question. What if this was not the end? What if this was the opening scene? I stopped checking my email after that. Deleted the app off my phone. Blocked the company on social media. I figured if they could erase me in a 15-minute meeting, I could erase them too. The first week was rough. I would wake up at 6, out of habit, still thinking I had a calendar full of calls and stand-ups to lead. I would sit at the kitchen table, staring at my cold coffee, wondering what the hell I was supposed to do now. But then something strange happened. The quiet started to feel different. Not peaceful. Not yet. But spacious. There was room now. Room in my head, in my time, in my bones. I started going on walks, sometimes for hours. Just me, the sound of gravel under my shoes, and thoughts I had buried years ago. One day, I found myself standing outside this old community center. It had a faded "Tech for Teens" banner flapping in the wind. I went in on impulse, asked if they needed help. They said yes before I even explained who I was. 2 days later, I was teaching Python to high schoolers who barely knew how to save a file. And something clicked. They asked questions that reminded me of who I used to be. Curious, scrappy, hungry to learn. I saw in them the same spark that used to drive me, before it got buried under deadlines and red tape. I started helping out every week. Sometimes twice. No pay, just purpose. Meanwhile, I took freelance gigs, little back-end fixes for small businesses that could not afford fancy agencies. I rebuilt a bakery's POS system, helped a mechanic set up his scheduling app. Did not make much, but it felt honest. Real. Then came Jake. He was an old coworker, one of the few who reached out after I got cut loose. We grabbed coffee, talked about the mess at the company, and then he said something that stuck. You ever think about building something of your own? At first, I laughed. I was 43. I had a mortgage, a daughter, a used Camry with a broken air vent. I was not some 20-something trying to launch the next big thing. But Jake just shrugged and said, you have more real-world knowledge than half those kids in accelerator programs. And you are not chasing investors, you are solving problems. I went home and wrote down 3 words: simple, honest, useful. That night, I started sketching something. A tool I had always wanted back at the company. A clean, no BS way for engineers to log fixes, share context, and avoid repeating mistakes. Something human-readable, not built for metrics, but for actual people doing actual work. I called it Groundwire. I did not tell anyone at first. Just built it piece by piece at night, while Emma slept and the city quieted down. And for the first time in years, I felt alive. Like I had finally stopped begging for a seat at their table, and started building my own. I launched a prototype of Groundwire quietly. No PR, no funding, just a GitHub page, a Stripe link, and a simple walkthrough video I filmed in my garage. My voice cracked halfway through, and the lighting was awful. But it was real. Within 2 weeks, 3 dev teams had downloaded it. Within 2 months, 12 companies were using it in production. No ads, no cold emails, just word of mouth. And then, out of nowhere, I got a message from an old colleague. Lauren. She had worked under me back at the company. Sharp, reliable, way too good for how they treated her. She wrote, hey, not sure if you've seen the news, but things here are unraveling. That word, unraveling, stuck in my mind like a thread begging to be pulled. I did a search, not out of curiosity, out of instinct, because I had felt it. The cracks, the rot under the polished walls. The headlines were not huge, at first, just whispers. High-level exec departs amid restructuring. Internal audit raises concerns over vendor contracts. Anonymous source describes culture of fear at tech giant. I recognized the names. Jordan, the VP who used me as a shield, gone, quietly pursuing other opportunities. Translation, forced out. The CTO who once promised me a promotion, then ghosted my review, resigned 3 weeks later. Then came the lawsuit. Some ex-employee, braver than I had been, filed a formal complaint. Wrongful termination, hostile work environment, manipulation of internal metrics. Sounded all too familiar. Reddit threads started popping up. Anyone else get chewed up and spit out by these guys? People were sharing stories. My stories, just with different names and different dates. And while all of that noise filled the feeds, Groundwire kept growing. It was small but stable. Freelancers were picking it up. Startups were reaching out. Even a few mid-sized firms were asking for team licenses. One day, I got an email from a platform I used to respect, one that had once passed on hiring me. Subject: partnership inquiry. Turns out they wanted to integrate GroundWire into their DevOps toolkit. I laughed when I saw the name of the sender. He had been one of the execs who ignored me at meetings. Now he was offering me a revenue share. And just like that, the shift was real. I was not watching my old world fall apart from the outside anymore. I was climbing from the wreckage, holding something they never thought I could build. But I knew, somewhere down the line, they were going to come knocking. And the question would not be if I answered. It would be how. It came on a Tuesday. No warning. My inbox dinged just as I was finishing a client call. I almost ignored it, but the subject line stopped me cold. GroundWire, urgent partnership discussion. The sender? Stacy Harmon, current interim CTO of the very company that kicked me to the curb. I stared at the screen for a while. Read the subject line 3 times before clicking. The email was polite, professional, a little too smooth. She said they had been tracking GroundWire's growth with interest. Said it aligned with their new internal initiatives. Asked if I would be open to a strategic conversation regarding mutual benefits. Mutual benefits. I nearly spit out my coffee. I did some digging. Stacy had been one of Jordan's closest allies back in the day. The same Stacy who once told me, behind closed doors, that maybe I needed to learn how to play the game better. Apparently, the game had changed. So I read between the lines. They were bleeding engineers. The lawsuit had gone public now. Shareholders were rattled. Internal docs had leaked. Turns out, the culture they built on fear and fluff did not hold up under pressure. People were leaving. Their systems were crumbling. And now, the one guy they shoved out without a thank you was holding a product their engineers actually wanted to use. Part of me wanted to ignore the email. Just delete it and move on. But I did not. Instead, I forwarded it to Jake with one sentence. Called it. He replied with a popcorn emoji. That night, I sat on the couch, the house quiet except for the hum of the fridge, and thought about what this meant. Not just for them, for me. A few years ago, I would have jumped at the chance. Craved it, even. A seat at their table, redemption, headlines with my name attached. Back then, I was still trying to prove I belonged. But now, I looked around. Emma's drawing was still taped to the fridge. My laptop was covered in post-its and ideas that I believed in. GroundWire was not perfect, but it was mine, built on nights of doubt and mornings of quiet victories. The email was still open on my screen. I hovered my finger over the keyboard, and I asked myself, plain and clear, do I owe them anything? I said yes. Not because I wanted to help them. Not at first. I agreed to the meeting because I needed to see it for myself, to see how bad it had gotten. To look them in the eye, the same people who tossed me aside, and watch them sweat as they asked for my help. Stacy scheduled it for the following Friday. Virtual, of course, she wrote, like we were old friends catching up over coffee. I cleaned my desk that morning. Not because I was nervous. I just wanted things to look intentional. I put on a plain button-down shirt. Same one I wore the day they fired me. Seemed fitting. The call connected right on the dot. There she was, Stacy Harmon. Slick hair, black blazer, forced warmth in her voice. She looked older than I remembered. Or maybe just tired. Or exposed. Ben, she said with a big smile. It's really good to see you. I nodded. No smile. She dove right in. No small talk. No apologies. We have been reviewing internal tooling options, and GroundWire keeps coming up in conversations. Our engineers love it. The simplicity, the context layers. It is exactly what we have been trying to build in-house for months. She laughed, almost nervously. To be honest, we were surprised when we found out you built it. I let that one hang in the air. Then I asked, and what exactly are you proposing? She shifted a little in her chair. Well, we would love to explore an acquisition, or possibly a licensing deal. Our internal systems are undergoing transitions. Translation, everything was on fire. I asked her point blank, why now? She blinked. Excuse me. You had me. For 15 years. You had my time, my loyalty, my best work. And you threw it away the moment it was convenient. So again, why now? For the first time in the whole call, she did not have a polished answer. Just a pause. Then she said, because we need you, Ben. There it was. The truth. A few years ago, that sentence would have lit me up inside. I would have felt vindicated. Seen. But now, it felt hollow. Because I did not need them anymore. The silence stretched long enough to make her uncomfortable. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "But I am not promising anything." She smiled, relieved. "Of course. Totally understand. We appreciate the consideration." When the call ended, I sat there for a long time, and a thought crept in, slow and deliberate. I was not the underdog anymore. They were. The next few weeks, I watched from a distance as everything started collapsing, faster than I expected. First came the press. A former engineer leaked internal documents showing how leadership had manipulated bug reports to inflate performance metrics. Some of the screenshots showed my name, buried in the margins, marked as non-essential during the cuts. That part went viral. Then came the investors. Two major backers pulled out, citing serious concerns over governance. Their stock, once steady, took a dive so sharp even the loyalists started jumping ship. And inside, chaos. Lauren sent me a message one night. 3 managers quit today. 2 more gave notice. People are scrambling. The culture I once helped build, the team spirit, the shared victories, the sense of purpose, it was gone. Replaced by paranoia, blame, backdoor deals. They were cannibalizing each other from the inside out. I read it all with a strange kind of detachment, like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. But then came the second offer. This time, not from Stacy. It came directly from the board. An emergency invite to a private strategy meeting with a ridiculous NDA and a vague subject line. Bridge solutions for Q3 survival. Jake saw the invite and immediately called me. "You realize what this is, right?" he asked. I did. They did not just want ground wire anymore. They wanted me. My name still carried weight with the engineers who had not left. The board needed someone with credibility. Someone who looked like stability. Someone who could plug the holes while they bailed water. I sat with it for hours. Played out every angle. It was tempting. The payday alone could set Emma and me up for years. Full buyout. Clean exit. Or maybe even a consulting deal where I could swoop in, play hero, then leave before things got worse. But then another thought came creeping in. If I walked back through those doors, even as a savior, would I still be letting them win? Would I be cleaning up the same mess they had made, just for a bigger check? I stared at the ceiling that night and whispered the question I had been avoiding for weeks. Do I help the company that destroyed me, just because I finally can? I did not answer them right away. The board gave me 72 hours to decide. I used every second, not because I needed the time, but because I wanted them to sweat. I wanted them to sit in silence, checking their inboxes, refreshing their phones, wondering if the man they discarded would come back to bail them out. I spent that first day doing nothing related to work. Took Emma to the park. Bought us both way too big milkshakes. Watched her run toward the swings like nothing in the world could touch her. On day 2, I dug up old notebooks. The ones from years ago. Back when I was still mapping backend flows at midnight on scratch paper, trying to get promoted. I found a page that made me pause, something I wrote to myself during a rough patch. You are more than what they pay you for. That hit hard. Because for so long, I let them define my worth. My role. My future. Now they were offering money, titles, partnerships, but none of that changed the truth. I had already built something better without them. On the third day, I opened the offer. It was big. Stupid big. They were willing to license ground wire exclusively for 3 years, give me an executive consultant title, equity, the works. The cherry on top? They wanted me to oversee cultural repair. They wanted me to fix the very soul they had corrupted. I closed the laptop, sat back, and just breathed. They were offering me everything I thought I wanted years too late. And yet, a part of me was still tempted. Not for revenge, not for validation, for the engineers still trapped inside, for the juniors trying to survive under the same broken system I barely crawled out of, for the teams still fighting to do good work in a place that punished them for it. I remembered their faces. Some were friends. Some were just names on Slack threads. But I knew their pain. I had lived it. That night, Jake called me again. You going to do it? He asked. I do not know, I told him. I just do not want to become them. He was quiet for a second, then said something I will never forget. Maybe the Real wind is not burning them down. Maybe it is just living well enough that their fire never touches you again. And for the first time, I wondered. Maybe this was not about choosing revenge. Maybe it was about choosing freedom. I woke up early on the final day. No alarm, just that quiet certainty that something needed to be finished. Made coffee. Sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop. The cursor blinked inside a blank reply draft to the board. For a moment, I stared at the screen, wondering what version of me they were hoping for. The desperate ex-employee? The reformed hero? The loyal veteran returned to patch the leaks? They would get none of those. I typed slowly, carefully, each sentence deliberate. Thank you for the offer. I understand the challenges your organization is facing. Unfortunately, I will not be moving forward with any form of partnership, licensing, or consulting engagement at this time. Then I paused, hovered my fingers over the keys. I could have ended it there, but something in me wanted to leave them with just a little truth. Not cruelty, not revenge, just clarity. So I added, Groundwire was built in the silence that followed my termination. Every late night, every quiet morning, every step of rebuilding came from the void your leadership left behind. I wish you the best in finding someone who can help you repair what you broke. I hit send, and just like that, it was done. No trumpets, no dramatic exits, just a quiet refusal. A closed door. I shut the laptop, stood up, and let out a breath I had been holding for years. That afternoon, I took Emma to our favorite spot by the lake. She ran ahead with a kite, her laughter cutting through the wind. I sat on a bench and watched the water move, steady, wide, unbothered. That was how I felt. Unbothered. Let them scramble. Let them rot under the weight of their own ambition. Let them wonder what might have been if they had chosen better. If they had chosen me. 6 months have passed since I hit send on that email. The company? Still spiraling. Their last quarterly report was a bloodbath. Half their leadership has resigned. 2 class action lawsuits are underway. Their employee review scores, once padded with fake praise, are now brutally honest. Words like toxic, unstable, directionless flood the pages. I hear they are shopping for smaller firms to acquire, clawing for relevance, leaking cash like a busted pipe. Meanwhile, Groundwire? Still small, still mine. We have a modest team now, me, Jake, 2 other developers, and 1 part-time support lead who works out of a cabin in Vermont. We are not unicorns. We are not flashy, but we are alive. Real. I wake up, log in, talk to customers who actually care. Ship updates we believe in. And when I close my laptop at the end of the day, I do not feel drained. I feel clean. Emma's school had a STEM fair last week. She dragged me there, made me stand by her little coding project while she explained it to strangers like she was pitching to NASA. She had drawn a sign that said, Groundwire Jr., and taped it above her station. I cried in the car afterward. Not loud, not sad, just full. The other night, I got another message. From Stacy. She did not mention the company, did not ask for a meeting. She just wrote, You made the right choice. I wish I had. I did not respond. Not out of spite. Out of peace. You see, I spent years trying to be essential to people who treated me like a spare part. I gave them my time, my loyalty, my heart, and they taught me a hard truth. Some people will only value you once you stop needing their approval. So no, I did not burn their house down. I built a better one across the street. And when they came knocking, I let the silence answer for me.